is what experts say always right? And if not, are there alternatives to find truth? And which are they? And how can we use them? These and more you will find out in today's episode of the podcast According to Sci-Faith. I am Joshua Göcking and you are listening to According to Sci-Faith. If you listen to what current experts on science say, you probably won't get ideas like that the earth was created by a god, about the earth being created in general. You much rather would get ideas like life, like the world or the universe coming to existence by itself, life coming into place by evolutionary processes alone. So this would be the image that many of the scientific experts of especially today's time would bring to you. So the question is, since they are the experts, are they right? Is it true? Is it true that the world was never created? Is it true that there is no God? Is it true that we are just a random result by evolutionary processes and so on? So this is the question you would have to ask then. And if you would say no, that does not necessarily mean that, it does not necessarily have to be the case, then the question is, okay, but if I cannot trust the expert, or if in this case I cannot listen to what the experts say, then who can I listen to, or what can I listen to, or how can I define what's true and what's not true? And this is the question we especially want to consider today. And we want to start this by, first of all, looking at what an expert actually is. So in most cases, you would define an expert like something. So you can, first of all, you cannot say somebody is an expert, because an expert is always defined in relation to some topic. I mean, I think there's nobody who is really an expert on all topics you can be an expert on. So there are experts in science, there are in this broad topic, there are also experts in medicine, there are experts in physics, experts in chemistry, and so on. And then there are experts in politics, experts. Also, there are also sub-areas. So there are experts in American politics, experts in European, German, and so on politics, experts in politics of the Middle East, and so on. And then there are experts in economy, and you can also do the sub-area. So there are many kinds of experts to different areas, and the question is how can you say this is one person is an expert on this? Is there a book you need to read and then you are an expert, or is it a course at a university you have to take? Is it a degree at a university that you have to have? So these are the questions you might ask. And most of the times, or the most logical definition of an expert that I have heard is that an expert is somebody who is an expert in an area, is somebody who knows more about that topic than 90% of the people. So he's in the 10% of people who knows most about this topic. I think that's a pretty good definition for what an expert actually is. And so the reasoning, the idea would then, of course, be, okay, if this is what an expert is, then it might make sense in topics regarding, in fields regarding their topics, or in questions regarding coming from that field, to listen to what the expert says. And in most cases we do so. So if you have some ailment, if something in your body hurts and or is different than it used to, and you don't know what it is, I think every one of us does is going to their doctor. And what is a doctor? A doctor is, of course, an expert in medicine. So he knows more about medicine and the human body than 90% or even more of the population. So we go to him, and so since he knows more of this, he can tell us, okay, you have this and that problem, and we need to treat it in such a way. And in most cases, we trust what the doctors say, because we know they are experts on this topic. But here it also is, some people who went to several doctors or had an issue where the doctor couldn't find out what it was and another one could, or where one doctor was wrong and the other was right, or maybe all the doctors were wrong. So here we also say that just because you're an expert, of course you are not always right. Nobody would expect it. But this is also already shows that it might not be the only solution to always just listen to the expert. But also, if you look at alternatives, especially in the medicinal field, there are many people who are not doctors but think of things that might happen. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So this is always, but usually you are better off if you listen to one of the experts or the doctors, of course. So but there's also already, you see already the problem that you cannot, of course, not take it for absolute truth, what an expert might say. So this is not the main issue, what there is with expertism, as I call it, and as the episode is also called. So because there are, usually it should be the case, to every side, to every field, to every scientific field, to every, you name it, topic, to everything where there are experts to, there are often both two sides to look at it. So there are doctors who are in favor of certain treaty of a disease, and those who are not in favor of such a way to treat the disease, and do propose different things. So there are on both sides. They usually should be experts, but most of the time only one side is listened to, or one side seems to be louder, and this is often also an issue, and it can also be misused in a certain way. So, for example, what you can often see in the news, if you read an article, and the article is in such a way that they want this article to be opinionless, so they try to just report the facts. But what you often see in this article, when the journalist cannot who still tries to bring his side of the opinion through, there's often a sentence like, experts say such and such, and then that experts approve of this opinion or disapprove of that opinion. And in most cases it is like that you could basically find experts who would approve or disapprove to this thesis, and by adding that sentence, which you could either way from any side, they just manage to get some leverage to their opinion, and without and putting basically their opinion as a fact into an opinionless article. So that's kind of cheating that you often see in the news, and but also it shows that just because somebody is an expert on it, it does not mean that he's the only expert, and there are many who maybe have a different opinion, or who know as much as he does about the topic but still come to a different conclusion. So this is also really important, because the way we find conclusions is not only depending on facts, but also on personal opinion and on our own way of thinking. So so this is also really important. And sometimes sometimes only one side of the experts is seen, or even, and this is even more, if the expert class is too small, then some opinions are just not represented. And this is not necessarily the case because they are ruled out by the facts, but it could easily also be the case because there are so few experts that nobody of this opinion is in there, or even through peer pressure that nobody is able to speak out, or that disagreeable expert voices are then shut down or something. So these things often also happened in science. For example, there was the case when during the time also of Isaac Newton still, and Isaac Newton was a big believer in that light is consisting of particles. And but during the time there was also Huygens, and Huygens was not as well established as Newton, by far not, but he said that life consists of waves, or life is a wave. And because Newton fought this really hard, Huygens could not get through with this in the beginning. Only after there was somebody who did an experiment. I just don't know the name right now, sorry. But somebody did an experiment, and he could show that through interference experiments, he could show that light gets an interference pattern, which shows that it behaves like a wave. In the end, you can say both were right. As you can see in quantum mechanics, you can see that light behaves as a wave and a particle. So both were kind of right, but using the experimental facts that were available to Newton's times, everything looked like light being a wave. But still, Newton, as somebody who was really established in the science community, could push this aside for a long time and push this opinion of, or this conclusion of Huygens aside for a long time, because he was better established in the scientific community. And also recently I held on a conference, I was allowed to hold a talk about one of the greatest mathematicians of all times, I think, Georg Cantor. And he had pretty huge new theories. He was basically the founder of set theory, and the things he found, or the theory he postulated there was really controversial, and so it took a time until people took it serious and really appreciated the work he done. So as we can see, there are disagreeable voices who oftentimes also tend to be right. It's often the newcomers who come with new ideas that oftentimes tend to be the right ones, and they also tend to be shut down. And this is also an problem with this expertism, or this expert class. And also one last but still very important point is that those expert classes are oftentimes highly influenced by a worldview or an ideology. So a dominating worldview and ideology can really become a problem there. And this is not only when they are supporters of those who put forward this ideology, they can even be contrahands to that, or enemies of that, but still be suffer under this this occurrence. And there's a famous example of this in antiquity. So recently I read a book of Suetonius, the 12 Caesars. So if you are interested in history, and especially interested in the Roman Empire, and want to know more about how the Roman Republic fell and how the lives of the first emperors were, then this is really a book to read about this topic. Suetonius was, I think, a highly Roman official 100 years or so after Christ, and he had access to almost all libraries or in Rome, so he could get through the historical data because he had access to them, which was a rare privilege at that time. And so he wrote biographies of the first 12 Caesars, starting with Julius Caesar and going all the way through to Domitian. And those are really interesting, and really interesting sources also for historians, but also to read and learn more about Rome. It's really interesting to read them. And he really, and you see this in his books, he really despised these Caesars, or most of them. So some of them he thought were okay, but most of them he really despised. And he also, I believe, he also thought that the time before the Roman Empire, the time where it still was a republic, he preferred that time. So he was really you could say, an enemy of those Caesars. And so he had no high opinion of them. And the one of whom he had probably the lowest opinion, and he was surely not the only one who the one he probably had the lowest opinion of was Emperor Nero. And I mean, this comes not by chance. I mean, if you just read a little bit about what Nero really did, then you're really disgusted by how he could behave. I mean, one example is many people believe that Nero was behind the burning of Rome. So there was a fire in Rome, and many believe that Nero was the one who let them kindle it, and just because he wanted to sing about a fire, because he regarded himself as a really artistic person. So a really sick mind. And then afterwards he accused the Christian of setting this fire when outrage when the people were outraged because their homes were burned, of course. So this was how he was, and this is also the reason why then the persecution of Christians started in the Roman Empire, because Nero used them as a patsy for his own wrongdoings. And so Suetonius really, you can see it in all his writings. He despised Nero like nobody else. And the Roman people did so too, which is why in the end there was a plot against Nero to have him killed. But Suetonius really despised him, but still, when talking about the Christians, you see that he just believed most of the conspiracy theories that went around about the Christians then. For example, what they believed about the Christians, and what Suetonius also believed about them, was that they were eating flesh and blood like cannibals. And of course, the reason for this belief is that the Christians were doing the communion, where Christ told them to do this as a remembrance of him, so eating the bread and drinking the wine, and where the bread symbolizes his body and the wine symbolizes his blood. But of course, it was, as anyone would know who knows just one thing about Christianity, that it was a symbolic thing, that no Christians was actually eating human flesh. So it was a complete nonsense, but Suetonius still believed it, and as somebody from this expert class, as somebody who has access to so much data, he should have known better, and he should not, especially also due to his being against most of the emperors, he should not have fallen for this conspiracy theory, for this lies about the Christians, basically, but he still did. And so in this you can see that influence and worldview, or that there is an influence of worldview and ideologies on experts that you cannot deny. I mean, even if they are against the current government or the current belief system or whatever, they still might hold positions that are influenced by them, as Suetonius clearly did. So what can we do with this? I mean, there's also one funny saying that I'm not sure if it does also exist in the English language, but in German we used to say that experts are the ones who can tell you exactly what will happen, and when it does not happen, they can explain you exactly why it did not happen. So this is often said about experts, and this is also but of course that's not a problem. I mean, we all get wrong. So everyone, I guess, tried to predict some future event, and in the end, it turned out to get completely different because we couldn't possibly consider all the factors. So that's not a problem. So, and it's not that we can demand of anyone to know everything. That's just impossible. But when dealing with decisions we have to take or things we have to understand, or where we have to make decisions, where we have to know the truth, or where we are looking for the truth, it is important to understand, or to try to understand, how can we get there. And I think, especially as what I said before should show, trusting on what the experts or the ones who know the most about a certain topic, trusting only what they say can lead to difficulties, because they have their own way of thinking, their own conclusions, their own things that influence them, and we don't want to be influenced by that. We want to make our own decisions, come to our own conclusions. And so what do we actually do? And there's so there's that is the great questions. And I think one is, I mean, of course, I'm not recommending to not trust experts at all, or to not trust people who know more about a certain topic at all. That's for sure not what I'm saying. But I think it's always important to still be critical. So I mean, if you read or see what an expert on a certain topic says, especially in the news, I think there's that you can come to a point where you really can filter what this person says that is really based on fact, and what a person says that it is really based on opinions. But I mean, even that goes no. So even then is the question: how do I make my own conclusions? And as Christians, we of course say, okay, it needs to be based on the Word of God. As Christians, we believe that the Word of God is the ultimate truth, and that it is from God, so that the Bible has been given by God to us, and that if we on a foundation of the Bible. If we are on the foundation of the Bible and look at the things where we have to make decisions of, where we have to find the truth, then we will find it in there. We will find it by looking at it from a biblical viewpoint. So, but this, if you do not yet believe, then this is of course difficult. Or how can you how can you first, if you are somebody who says, okay, I agree with that from a outside point of view, but currently I do not believe that the Bible is the Word of God. So what can I do then? How can I, if the truth I want to find is whether the Bible is the truth, then how can I come to this place? And I think there's one interesting example in literature of how when the experts all say something else, how you might also come to a conclusion that is different, but maybe still the truth. And this is from a book by Mark Twain. I think everyone knows it. It's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And I mean, I think everyone knows basically the story. It's about this boy Huckleberry Finn who runs away, and he runs away with a slave who's also fleeing from his slave owner, and they become on the way they become really good friends. And at some point, Huckleberry Finn, who grew up in the Deep South, and because of that, of course, he thinks freeing a slave is wrong. He thinks that he needs to, that if he wants to do right, he needs to return the slave to his slave owner, because it's in the viewpoint of those people then, it was his property. And so he is struggling with that, what he thinks is right, and what he thinks that he needs to do, and with the fact that he got to know this slave, and they became friends, and he loves him, and so there's this bond between them. So he needs to he needs to make a decision there. And what's interesting is so what he does is he decides, no, I'm not gonna turn it over. And even if I so since he also believes that so in the Deep South, probably at that time, that the church always said that it was right, that slavery would be right. And so he says, so even if I go to hell, I still will free the slave and will help him to come into freedom. And so he decided to go with what his heart was telling him, and not with what society or the society then in this state was telling him. And this is so here you can see all the experts told him, yeah, you need to bring the slave back to his slave owner, you need to do the right thing, quote unquote. But he was saying, he basically decided to go with his heart. And I mean, there is a caveat there, because as the Bible also tells, but I think everyone also knows by experience that our own heart can be deceived. So we can maybe make a decision on our gut feeling, or on our by just following our heart, and it can turn out to be the wrong one. So our heart can be deceived. But I think what I think the way to truth in this case is not just to trust what our heart tells, but to also trust that God can speak to our heart, that God can speak to us, to our heart, and move us there and show us what the truth is. And I think that is the important way to find truth, that to go by what we in our heart know is true, and to allow God to encounter us in our heart and show us the truth. And this is, I think, especially if you are in science or in the scientific area and looking for truth, I think it's especially important, because oftentimes we are, or I get this feeling that oftentimes people are looking in science for God, and I mean, he's not to. I mean, you can find God in nature. He is reflected in nature. His character and his person is reflected in his creation, but you cannot find him like, or you cannot prove God's existence in nature. You can. It's just not possible. And so I think sometimes if we are looking for truth in the scientific, then it's pretty fast that God is ruled out, because he cannot be proven there, not because he is not there, but because it's just not possible, because that's just not what science is actually for. So if we want to find God, we need to search him where we can find him, and this is in our hearts, in searching out for him, in searching him in his words and in his word, and trying and allowing him to encounter us in our hearts. And so I think that this also explains why many experts in science believe that God is not real, because he is not to be found in in our mind. He is to be found when he encounters us in our heart. And so I think this is an important shift one has to make when one is actually searching for truth, to know that truth isn't, that the complete truth is not found in scientific facts, but in what we know in our heart to be true. And I think more than that, what God shows us in our heart, if we allow him to show it to us, what is true. And I think I want to encourage everyone who is really looking for the truth, who is listening to this podcast because you are wanting to know the truth, wanting to know how where the truth is to be found, that you can find it, or you can find it this way. So I want to encourage everyone to allow God to encounter you in your own heart, and to go from there. And from there you can find him everywhere. Basically, you will then see him in science, you will see him in nature, you will most of all see him in his word, so the Bible. And so I encourage you to look for this encounter of him in your heart, and then you will find him basically everywhere. So this was today's episode on Expertism. I hope you enjoyed it and you could take something away of it. As you might have noticed, there was a longer break in since the last podcast episode. I did a summer break. There were many things happened. I got married in the meantime. So, but now I'm back at producing podcast episodes. There will, I think, some additional episodes coming in the next weeks, and I hope I'm looking forward to doing this, and I hope you will listen to them too. Also, I have for my English listeners, I have this I have a Substack or Sci-Faith Substack, and where I also host this podcast. And also on the Substack I will in the next weeks put also articles from my blog there. If you know my blog, you can find, or if you don't know it yet, you can find it at sci-faith.de/en/blog, where I put articles about the topic of science and faith regularly. You can find it there, and you can read some of them there. I will migrate them more and more to Substack, and I will probably also add additional ones to different topics about science and faith. So if you are interested in this, then I encourage you to read them and to follow me there on Substack. And if you have any questions or anything that you want to ask me, or any topics that you want to have covered on this podcast, you can contact me on the contact form on my webpage. So again, that's sci-faith.de/en. And for the contact form, you put a /contact to this page, or you just click your way through on the webpage. And yeah, of course, and if you like this podcast, then feel free to subscribe and give me a 5-star rating, and also recommend it to your friends, because I think it's important to hear more about this topic. So thanks for listening, and until next time.